My name's Peter Hudson. I'm a painter and musician. My main focus is on my artwork.
I'm Bianca Beetson. I'm a proud cubby woman. I'm a visual artist and run the Contemporary Australian Indigenous Art Degree program in Brisbane. And when I'm not there, I'm dealing with cultural heritage and native title matters on my country as well.
I'm Stephen Guthrie, a director of Bark Design Architects.
Lindy Atkin, an architect, co-director of Bark Architects. And yeah, this is our favourite building on the coast, of course.
I'm James Birrell. I'm a music festival promoter and a landscape architect, an urban designer, furniture designer.
My name's Gary David Crew. I'm an author. I've lived in Maleny for now 25 years. I'm a professor at the University of the Sunshine Coast.
I'm Jill Morris. This is my book farm. I'm sitting at the big table in the forest, and this area that surrounds us is the Coxon's Fig Parrot Paddock.
I grew up in Sydney and then Brisbane, but started coming up here when my mother's parents moved up here in 1974.
I was actually born in the UK and grew up in the Bahamas and came across Noosa and the Sunshine Coast on a trip around Australia, and then actually was drawn back to the place because it kind of had a similar feel to the Bahamas in terms of a casual, real strong connection to landscape and nature and a really lovely natural environment.
I was born here, 1980. I think when I was born here there was about 100,000 people between Noosa and Bribie Island.
My family were removed from Buderim to Cherbourg. The Loader family connect to Buderim, and that's my connection to the Sunshine Coast. My grandmother went out west, I guess, to try and hide away from the act.
My mum's family and my dad's family come from North Queensland. When we were little kids, every Christmas holidays we would board the Sunlander in Brisbane at Roma Street and travel up to Home Hill and Ingham to visit our nanas. During that trip, it was the first time I noticed the Glasshouse Mountains because the train line goes directly past the mountains. And as a young kid, I remember seeing Tibbergargan and just being aware of its presence and its brooding sort of spirit.
I was born in Brisbane and grew up in Brisbane and lived in Brisbane for over 40 years. It became claustrophobic, I suppose. I just wanted to run away, and this land was available, this house was built to our design, and the garden was planted by my wife, and we have kind of adopted this landscape. I'm in no rush to leave. There's virtually no sound here at all except for birds, and after I come home from a day at uni, I come back to this view, this veranda, this landscape, this ambience, and I settle. And it's as a result of that belonging in the landscape rather than being inspired by the landscape that I'm able to write. I often in this chair I've got a board I put across here, and I'll bring my laptop out and I'll actually write on the veranda.
There was nothing really inspiring in terms of building stock to rent out, so we kind of set about creating our own space that we'd bring our team and clients together in an environment that's probably different to the norm in terms of being connected to the environment and nature, but also being connected to IT so we can still operate a functioning practice.
We've been living here for the last just over 20 years, and this block of land came up for sale in the year 2000, and it fitted everything that we were looking for. We wanted to be in a regional area, in a rural situation, rather than in a semi-urban environment.
One of the key things about what we try and do in our architecture and design is connect people to place and the environment and landscape. And so starting that with our own workspace was critical to understanding and showing clients spaces that open up to landscape and are responsive to climate.
And the fact that we always have natural ventilation and natural light, and you can always see out to a natural environment, is really important in the way that it influences how we think about how you live and how you work.
One of the key aspects of design that we look for is timelessness, to demonstrate that in a workspace where clients might go, wow, I thought it was much younger than it really is. It kind of reinforces to us that, yeah, it's got a timeless aspect to it. It's the sort of space I love to come every morning, and clients still walk through the door and go, how'd you get any work done here?
All work that I've ever done in publishing, books for publishing, radio, television, film, everything has always been bound up with the land. And it happens to be mostly this land. My father died during the war, and my mother took us to Birrell, so we wouldn't notice he wasn't there for Christmas. And it was walking in the rainforest there and writing my first poem beside a waterfall that I think has just stamped my life ever since. I haven't actually grown up yet. Everything that I've done has been in 3 areas, and that is protecting wildlife, endangered wildlife particularly, conserving and extending rainforest, and inspiring children in their writing and their thinking about rainforest.
Did you like that?
When I came to live here with my husband Richard in 1988, I was earning my living, running workshops and at all levels actually, and I was getting pretty tired, and I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll turn my place into a place where I can share with them and they can come and do their writing there. So I called it the Book Farm, and I used to say to the children that it had 3 meanings. You know, one was there were books being published here because I published the work of 45 other people. There were books that I was writing here, and then the real books were going to grow here in their heads.
I grew up in this house where we're at the moment. This house is called Kui, and it's on the riverbank, the Maroochy River. Dad and Mum bought this place off the family that built it, which was the Wally family from Nambour. And they had the general store in Nambour and also a farm in Nambour. And he built this with his own 2 hands. And they used to come down here by horse and cart for the weekenders. When Mum and Dad took it over, it was just a beautiful lawn with a house on it. And Dad planted every single tree on this property to mark my birth and my brother's birth. So I've got a wonderful connection to the land and a wonderful sense of place. It's a real home because I don't have any bad memories here. There's just wonderful, happy memories. And I don't have any other place like that. So it is a very special place for me.
As kids, we always used to go up for holidays to the Sunshine Coast. We'd go and fish up there. I always remember being obsessed with Glasshouse Mountains. In year 12 in high school, I had to do a self-portrait, and I did this massive big portrait of Tibrogargan with this really ugly red picket fence made out of paddle pop sticks around the bottom of it, because to me that was my self-portrait. And I couldn't explain and I couldn't understand why. You know, there was this connection with this place, and I always thought it looked like my Uncle Arthur. You know, it's guys, Uncle Artie's mounting into the face in the glass house. But you know, as I get older, I see it as an old, clever man with the big beard, and you know, one of our old ancestors.
When I first came to the coast, I was working with John Mainwaring, who continues to be, I guess you could say, an inspiration in terms of understanding the relation to place and climate, and that's sort of the architecture that kind of comes about through an aesthetic of function and simplicity and kind of casualness rather than being driven by sculpture or form. So it's really about the experience of place.
When Steve and I met, Steve was already working at John Mainwaring's, and I started working there on a really short time frame, and then went and worked with Lindsey and Kerry Clare as well as Gabriel Poole When I was at university, I first met Lindsey and Kerry Clare, and they were a total inspiration. Just the way that they had an inextricable link to the landscape in all of their projects, and the way that they operated as a couple as well.
I think the Sunshine Coast generally, in terms of design and architecture, still has a strong legacy of design going back.
My family didn't really talk much about their Aboriginal history. Our language was lost because my grandmother was not allowed to use a language, even though we know she was a fluent Kabi speaker. And so I'm in the process of trying to reinvigorate, reclaim a lot of our culture. There's a whole series of bunya works that I've done. They're these big, digital bunya trees. I've gone out and I've found these trees that I've connected with. We see these trees and plants and fauna and flora as being our ancestors, and we can't be removed. And then I've got this other series. I've got these bunya crown on, and they are so sharp. I was actually bleeding after doing the work, but I'm this bunya warrior, and I've got body paint on my face that relates to the story of Marucci, which was the black swan, and it also relates to the Kabi traditional burial paint, because some of it is about mourning and death of our country and death of the Marucci River, the death of the bunya. My custodial duty is to continue the story of the Bunya Fest, but also continue protecting and making people aware of the importance of those trees.
This frog belongs to this book, Green Air, and it's actually the frog that gave birth through the mouth. The most important thing about it is that it came from this area. It was found in the Obi and down at Conondale. So I've always been encouraging children to keep looking for it, with its big eyes on top of its head, a big mouth for little frogs jumping out and giving birth that way, webbed feet for swimming, and it sat on the basalt rocks beside the Obi, singing, eem, eem, eem.
To the public, I'm a children's writer. I've won the Australian Children's Book of the Year 4 times. One in particular, The Boy Who Grew Into a Tree, as if the landscape really were the parents of the child rather than the human parents. And I feel a great connection with the landscape in that way, that you do become part of it. The person who illustrated that and designed that is Dr. Ross Watkins, who's a lecturer with me at uni, and we sat on this veranda and put that book together. In this chair, I've had snakes literally half a metre away, and they just go about their business and keep going, and I leave them, pick on them.
I can't resist just eyeballing the mountains just for their physical beauty. That was the reason I chose to live in Mullaney, is because it's close to the mountains, and I use the mountains a lot in my work. The best stories from the Glasshouse Mountains are from the Indigenous people. I think about those stories when I'm making paintings of the Glasshouse Mountains. It's a reminder of how important land is, and it's a reminder that land holds memory and it has a spirit, and is deathly important that we look after it. Landscape painters eventually realise that nature is perfect, and I think the more you involve yourself as an artist with the landscape, eventually the land sort of gives up some of its secrets. For an artist, if you can sort of trap some of that into a painting, then it's a success.
Growing up on the river and looking over that primal landscape and really being a part of the ecology and the sense of place, and really understanding the deep primitive feel that you have in this landscape. I feel really connected to that, and those ancient Aboriginal stories that make up Coolah, Majimbra, Nindiri and Marucci were a big part of my psyche in growing up here, and I really felt that I understood the rhythm of life here. I suppose the Marucci River is to me what the Mississippi was to Huck Finn, really. I spent a lot of time out there looking for things and diving and There's just so many wonderful memories of parties and really vibrant people being part of this house, and the people that Mum and Dad brought into my life in this place is really something quite special as well. A few of those people, one's my godfather, who's a well-known Australian artist by the name of Charles Blackman, an oil painter. And he had moved up here basically to get out of Sydney and hang out with Dad, his old mate from Melbourne. And he lived up in Buderim, but he'd spend a lot of time down here. Charlie would sit here and draw everyone around the dinner table, and you know, there's those sort of sketches are still in the house here. So what I love about what Dad's done with this place is he's used it to capture all those memories and shape my appreciation of the Sunshine Coast more than anything.
I am commonly asked to go to speak internationally. There are parts on these tours where you go where there are guys walking around with M16s. I come back here and I literally walk around this house and touch all my favourite objects and say, down, now, I'm safe, I'm back here again. Then I pour a glass of wine and sit in my chair and I'm really safe. So.
If you're an artist, you've got to work 14 hours a day. This shed, I call it the workstation. I spend most of my time in here. It's a very important place for me to be. This is where I work and think, right here.